I must have been around 8 years old at the time this happened, and my sister was 12 or 13. We lived in a tiny little house that we called the shack, that our mom moved us into after she split up with our father. It was all we could afford. My sister and I shared a tiny bedroom, but one perk about the house was the huge backyard, with a large above-ground pool and deck that we could always play on. We had a big privacy fence, and being the nosy little kid I was, I liked to climb on some of the wooden boards of the fence and check out the neighbors. I recognized the two little boys who lived in the house kitty corner to us, because they went to my school. I made it a habit every day to climb up the side of my fence and hang around and talk to them. I never actually climbed over the fence, just climbed a plank so I was high enough to peer over and talk. They had an uncle named Randy who was probably in his 20s or 30s, and he was usually in the backyard doing housework, so I got to know him as well, and both me and my sister would hang on the fence and chat with him most days. Conversations were always innocent, and he seemed like a nice guy. Now looking back, I can see some red flags about him. I remember one time he had a basketball and accidentally threw it over our fence. We offered to grab it for him, but he insisted he could get it himself, and hopped over the fence with ease. We thought nothing of it at the time, but I imagine this was to test how easily or fast he could scale the fence. One day in passing, my sister mentioned to him that our mom works the night shift, and therefore it was just the two of us alone at night in the house. That was all he needed to hear. Shortly after that, it happened. I woke up one night to the sound of my sister crying. We shared a bunk bed, me on the bottom, and when I stood up, she was out of bed, leaning against the wall on the phone crying. I asked her what was wrong, but she assured me everything was fine and to go back to sleep, so I did. It wasn't until the next day that I learned what happened. Apparently, in the middle of the night, while our mom was away at work, Randy jumped the fence and tried to break in. He started banging on our bedroom window, telling my sister to let him in. She refused, but he wouldn't take no for an answer, so he started walking around the entire house, banging on the windows, yelling for her to let him in, and trying all the doors. That's when she got out of her bed and called 911, and I woke up. Yeah, I have no idea how I managed to sleep through all that commotion, because she tells me he was banging on her window, right by the bed, loudly. But I guess you could just sleep like you're dead when you're little. Of course, by the time the cops arrived, all he had to do was jump the fence in 10 seconds, and he was back in his yard. They knocked on his door, but he denied he did it, so the police said there was nothing they could do. We were shaken up by the incident, of course. My mom wasn't able to change her work schedule, so she started having us stay at our dad's at night. A few years passed without incident, and we assumed everything was fine. I had long stopped talking to the boys next door. Then it happened again. Guess who slept through the whole thing again? My sister was a couple of years older now and had a group of her friends over for a sleepover one night. We had a sliding glass door to the backyard, near where they were all sitting. The door had the typical vertical blinds, except weeks earlier one of them had broken and we couldn't get it to stay back on no matter what, so there was a gap in between the blinds where the broken one was gone. Anyway, the girls were all sitting around the couch, playing board games, when one of my sister's friends suddenly turned rigid. She said, "Don't freak out, but there's a guy standing at your sliding glass door." They all turned around, and there was Randy again, his face pressed up to the glass where the gap in the blinds were, just watching them all. Naturally, everyone freaked out and 911 was called. Just like last time, he jumped the fence and the cops said they couldn't prove anything, even though they described what he was wearing, and he answered the door in the same outfit when the police questioned him. That was the last straw, so we moved out of that house and got a restraining order against him. He didn't show up to court that day, so the judge automatically granted us the order. Never saw him again. Last I checked, I looked him up online. He's currently in prison for a bunch of random charges.